All right, we will call to order the Skokie Public Library Board meeting for Wednesday, February 12th, 2025 at 6:32 p.m. Susie, any comments from observers?
No.
No. All right, then let's move on to the minutes of the regular meeting of January 15th, 2025. Any comments, revisions? If not, can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. Director's report, page 3.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for making it tonight. I'll just highlight a few things. As I mentioned in my report, we're at the stage now where a full year has passed with the implementation of our strategic plan and our current priorities. We believe that it's okay now to shift some of those current priorities to kind of ongoing work, but not current priorities, and highlight some other things where we really want to invest more time and energy and resources into kind of launching some certain things. So some of the ideas that we're throwing around at this point are likely to be included are increasing local awareness of volunteering opportunities, fostering volunteerism. Our volunteer Palooza was such a success and had a really great response from that. And that's something we really want to kind of do more of. Proactively engaging with places where people are gathering already, like local faith organizations or local grocery stores or other kind of venues where people are already gathering. We want to make our presence felt there and just really do some more outreach and proactive engagement with the community. And then implementing our leadership norms and aspirations, expectations that were set last year, and really kind of activating that. So there are some other ideas as well, and we'll provide a full update to the board either in March or at the very latest in April when we give you our 6-month strategic update. We're holding some candidate forums coming up, and those should be interesting. I think we'll get a good turnout from the community. We're working with the League of Women Voters. I'm getting involved with the Chamber of Commerce transition as their executive director position is vacant right now. I helped interview an interim executive director who we're really impressed with, and it seems like she's going to help us kind of through this transition period. And I just mentioned our staff day. It was really a fun event, and it's always a really good time, and this day was no different. We had a full day of activities and opportunities for people to connect and have fun, but also learn a lot. And so thank you for supporting the closure of the library during that day, so we can have that kind of opportunity. So that's it.
Questions for Richard?
I was glad. Thank you so much for setting up the agenda. I think that was for the staff day. I think that was very helpful just to give us an idea of what kind of PD is happening within the library. So thank you for setting that.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Other questions or comments? If not, we'll move on to disbursement report, pages 5 through 16. Any questions or comments for that? If not, can I get a motion to approve the January 25th disbursement report?
Second.
All right, we have to vote individually since it's money. Mary?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Ella?
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
On to the final petty construction pay app number 7. Richard, page 17.
Yeah, you see the current payment due, it's a little above 15,000. That'll completely close out this project. Once again, it was a real success. We're getting a great space for our community, and it's already been used so much with concerts and movies and all kinds of activities. Amy's been really instrumental actually in finalizing all the adjustments on the AV equipment and the controls and everything. And one day I'll learn that stuff too. So I want to get that training. But yeah, it was, we had hit that one snag in the kind of couple months into the project with the delayed fixture and that kind of threw us off. But once we got that, everything was smooth. And so it's a very successful project.
I have a question just about the final overall projected budget for the project and then where we ended up coming in with, like, once we go through this.
Yes, okay, let me pull that up real 1 second here.
I believe we came in under, but I'm not.
We did,
Sure,
we
like-
definitely did. I can give you the exact amount here. 1 second.
In the meantime, I can say during staff day, I was there for the opening comments and in the petty, and the lighting's better, the sound's better, so.
Yes,
Nice.
definitely, yeah. Oh, oops, 1 second here. Sorry, there's lots of files here. We ended up, we're getting back around 43, close to 44,000 in what was contingency money. So like, in other words, like, the budget was approved with that included, and then SMC as our construction manager is saying we're crediting that back to you and not going to bill you for that, you know, for any of the contractors nor their own fees, administration fees. So we came in about 44,000 under our total budget. So yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
And so then does that go back into our general operating fund?
Reserve fund, yeah.
It will
Yeah.
go back to-
Yeah, essentially. I mean, it really technically never left because we didn't pay it. So, but it's that we don't owe it. Yeah, and it'll continue to sit. Yeah, exactly. The total cost with that is credited back to us was just under 1.3 million. So
And if there are no other questions, can I have a motion to approve Petty Auditorium Construction Pay App number 7 at a total cost of $15,152.56?
So moved.
All right, Ella,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
passes unanimously.
thank you.
On to the 9-month summary income statement ending 131 and page 19. Richard, I don't think we have to vote on this, right?
No, yeah, this is just an update. As we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, which is in April, we'll continue to give you looks at this. So it looks like we have an excess of expenditures over revenue right now because we haven't yet received all of our spring collections. We haven't received any of our spring collections yet. So once we start getting that in March, it'll turn the picture there. So yeah.
I just have two questions
Mhm.
on this. One is for the, I'm gonna sneeze here. There we go. I thought I was gonna sneeze there a second. For the interest, like when you look at what we budgeted for the interest earned versus what our year-to-date status is, we're significantly over, which is not a, it's a good thing to have excess earned. So could you discuss or just kind of go through where that discrepancy is coming from?
The interest we projected in the budget was based only on our GOF, general operating fund interest bearing accounts. And the number that we're including here includes our GOF and reserve, correct, Allison? And also Allison can speak a little bit more about this, but we went through a process last year where we switched most of our accounts actually from Fifth Third to Wintrust. And we ended up with just better rates, better, like more interest bearing accounts. Like it's just a better overall kind of situation for maximizing interest on our accounts. So I don't know, Does that sum it up, or do you have anything to add?
Yeah, one trust offered us, for our tax account, the opportunity to match Illinois funds interest rates. So essentially, our operating account that we use to pay our bills, you know, the tax account, has the same interest rate as our Illinois fund. So
That's been pretty high,
Yeah.
for a few years now, so.
Mhm.
And that is significant because if you think about it, like at any given point, we might have, you know, $7 million come into, for like spring collections, you know, and so that generates a lot of interest, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So then we plan for the budget for the coming year, obviously with earned interest. I'm assuming that we will be working off of like a higher
Yeah.
estimate of where our current year to date is versus what building it off of what the previous year's estimate.
That's what Allison and I decided to do when we were kind of constructing the budget this time around, because we thought, you know, I think it just makes sense because even in our quarterly investment updates, we started last week, month, providing the, all of the interest-bearing accounts, not just the reserve accounts. And also on these income statements, you always see the utilization of the reserve included on there. So we figured if we're including the reserve and the GOF, like, in these income statements, then we should reflect, all of the interest that we're getting, you know, because even though the revenue from the reserve interest-bearing accounts are just kind of staying in the reserve fund, you know, they're not like being really truly like transferred into the GOF to pay for operating expenditures or anything like that. It's still revenue, it's still money gained, you know, so, yeah.
Okay. And then my second question was on the fiscal 24 budget surplus,
Mhm.
estimate of $450,000 versus the year-to-date status, just kind of checking in on where we're at with that too.
Yeah, so just a reminder, because it was a little while ago, the utilization of the fiscal year 24 budget surplus was for a result of our corporate replacement taxes coming in high. So that this was like not this current fiscal year, but the year that ended in April 2024. And so we took that surplus, 450,000, and because we had a budget shortfall coming projected for this current fiscal year budget, we thought, okay, we'll consider that excess surplus and we'll hold it there in case we need to use that to pay for any operating expenditures this current fiscal year. And we haven't yet needed to, honestly, because a lot of it comes from when staff turnover happens and we kind of have like a gap in between hiring people and when people leave. There's essentially a decrease in expenditures, projected expenditures there. So we project that we may not even need to use a dip into that surplus from fiscal year 24.
Okay.
I mean, it's really just not new money, but it's money that's already in our GOF.
Okay.
So it's not going to be spent essentially is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're still not, you know, at the end of the fiscal year, so I don't want to say that for certain.
But it can carry over to the next year.
Yeah, and if if we don't spend it, then it'll just sit in our GOF and then it'll be part of our overall surplus in our GOF that we can use in subsequent years, so.
Okay.
That's why, yeah, it's kind of a little confusing there because we don't say that we received the revenue yet because we haven't spent it. We'll only say that we received it if we spend it. Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
that makes total
Yeah.
sense. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
So on the FY 25 budget, was there a line item for that? Did we?
The FY 25 budget is this,
Is that-
it says utilization
the
of fiscal year 20.
Okay.
Well, it's the same wording, yeah. It says utilization of fiscal year 24 budget surplus on it. We factored that in. But hopefully we won't need to use it. Yeah.
Other questions or comments? All right, then let's move on to the consent agenda, pages 20 through 34. Some of this is budget stuff again.
We have some additional reports here, including the community engagement reports.
I just wanted to know if you could talk about, it mentioned in here about the Skokie yearbook project. Is
Yeah.
that something that you could discuss a little bit about that?
I'm gonna let Amy take that one. Yeah.
So it kind of came out of our current priority area around play across all ages. And so we had a couple of staff members last spring who went to the interactivity conference up in Madison, where they saw a really cool, mostly like simple created portraits exhibit that was a community-wide initiative for Madison Public Library. It was actually based on a larger, different project that was on a library thing in Nashville called Our Town. And so they were really inspired thinking about that, how we facilitate some connection and belonging across language differences, knowing your neighbors. And so have developed what's going to be a year-long initiative starting in May. So it'll go all through fiscal year 26. And we have 3 segments that really first focus on who am I, who is in like my community network, and who is Skokie at large. So thinking about this sense, what came from creating portraits with small materials like stamps or things like that, very low barrier to entry, something that is play, but is also encouraging people to reflect on themselves and see others. So it's going to involve like all of our summer outreach with the bookmobile, things like that are going to have touch points with the yearbook project and some of these hands-on play and crafts. There are going to be exhibits throughout the year so that the portraits and, personal reflections that folks are creating are able to be shared. So people get to see themselves and see others in Skokie, and ultimately culminating in something that will contribute to the next 25-year time capsule. Because we're opening the Millennium Time Capsule this August.
Oh,
So,
oh, that's neat.
Have you seen the time capsule?
No.
It's not in there anymore, but it for many years it was in the east, like near the east lobby entrance.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a silver rectangular structure.
we're just getting close enough to when we're gonna open it that this is a little too easy to steal as of right now.
Yeah,
Like we're gonna.
yeah,
So, yeah, but so the Skokie Yearbook project, it's really combining that play, connection. Who am I? Getting to know our neighbors.
creating a sense of belonging and
Cool.
connectedness.
You're gonna see that reflected in our approach to summer reading this summer.
Okay.
It's got a little bit of that like yearbook, school, like if you ever were a kid who loved a composition notebook, you're gonna be excited.
I think we had some different possible names, but Jane Hanna, our communications and multimedia engagement manager, came up with the yearbook concept, right? And everyone loved it, so it should be fun.
I like how all of it's gonna tie together though. Like, I think that's cool because, for at least from a branding perspective, like there's so many different touch points that will make you think of the library as part of the community. So
Exactly.
cool.
That we're excited to do. It's like one of the first things in quite a while that we've done that is a year long and that keeps growing and looking a few different ways. Recognizing that folks have said, oh, that's a really cool thing you did, but I missed it. And like now it's done until next year. Like, how do we just have something that is ongoing that also becomes really familiar wherever you are in the community connected back to the library?
It's gonna be a really fun thing
Yeah.
too. I think it'll just brighten everyone's moods. And at staff day, we had a preview kind of some of the ways that people can make their portraits, and I did one. It was really fun. So.
Yeah, I enjoyed the 2024 year in review also. I don't think that's specifically mentioned
Yeah.
in the consent stuff, but
Yeah, Jane is really the creator of that along with her team, all of the CME team. And I love every year when it comes out, I love it, so. And we get so many we send it to all of our community partners as well, and we get so many positive comments about what we're doing. And so most of the time, a lot of people ask, how did you do that? What did you use? And so Jane answers a lot of questions, I think. for people and who want to do similar things, you know.
Other questions or comments on the consent agenda? If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? All in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Page 35, the amended budget. Richard?
Yes, this is a very minor thing, to be honest, because of how we know the auditors look at our budget and fiscal year. We just want to make sure that there are no issues because we spent some money from the fine arts acquisition fund, but didn't really we didn't include that in our budget before. We just didn't anticipate when that would happen. So since that did happen, we should go back and amend the current fiscal year budget to include utilization of the art acquisition fund, so that when the fiscal year ends and the auditors come and ask us about that expenditure, we'll say, no, it was in our amended budget, you know, and the board approved it. So
I have a question for this. So does this cover just the artwork or does it also cover, I think when we were looking at the artwork last time, we talked about getting, you know, special framing and all of that to make sure that the artwork is preserved well. Is that also included in this budget or does that come from someplace else?
we'll have to see, because I think we can cover the framing and some of the other fees outside of the art acquisition fund.
Okay,
But it really also depends on if we end up finding additional pieces
I see.
that kind of bring us close to that 65,000 threshold that the board approved before the fiscal year ends. So if we do, and if we don't, and we feel like we can just include the framing in this bucket, you know, from the art fund, then that's fine. But we can also, I have contingency money too, and a lot of times I like to take some of those services and kind of fees out of those lines so that we can just kind of keep this cleaner as just the cost of the artwork, you know, so.
I only mentioned it just because I view this artwork as a really big investment for the library, for the community, and framing and care of artwork can get expensive.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we are budgeting for that somewhere if it's not within this amount.
Yeah, I think we had not, but we have lines that we could take that out of this fiscal year that where there's some discretion, like the professional services and the contingency lines.
When would we plan on like finish like the procurement and hanging up of everything?
So actually, we just heard from our consultant who was connecting us with the framers that she's worked with in the past, and actually, I don't know all the details. Susie's handling all that. When did you say they were picking up the artwork?
So we're with Dixon Arts who also picked up our artwork for auction. They're planning on coming next week on Monday-ish, and then you're speaking the string.
And then did they, I can't remember if Gretchen said how long it would take for framing.
It would, I forgot the exact date, but it's like within a couple of weeks.
Okay, yeah. And then we already have an idea of like how we might present the new artwork together for the first, you know, kind of launch to introduce the artwork so that more people can see it until like they end up in wherever they're gonna end up for their semi-permanent homes, you know, so, yeah. We're thinking that near the cafe, there's like that big wall there and there's already track lighting there and it's heavy traffic, you know, so a lot of people can experience pieces there and Van's gonna come up with something really nice to kind of present the story of like the art, you know, so, yeah. We're shooting for summer to really have everything in and kind of talk about it and tell the public about it and so, yeah.
Along those lines, I know we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but just moving forward, then are we gonna continue to do this where we would amend budget for art as it comes year to year,
I
or
don't think so. I don't,
do we wanna put a, you know, like
Yeah.
art? line
The latter, yeah.
forward.
The latter, yeah. Like in the proposed budget, I have a utilization of art fund, so I think that now that we know our art program is kind of like, it's successful, we know what we're doing, we have a system of working with our consultant, we made our first purchases. Now it's likely that it's not, hard, it wouldn't be hard to believe that we could possibly be purchasing art next year too. So I think it's just better to put that up front. We'll put the full amount of whatever is left over, and then if we don't use it, it'll just stay in the fund. Just like kind of similar to the reserve fund where we say utilization of blank amount, but if we don't use it, it just means that it's like, it stays in the fund. Yeah.
No other question, comments? Can I get a motion to approve the amended FY 24-25 budget as presented?
Second,
All right, Mary,
yes.
Michelle,
Yes,
Ella? Yes. And that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Page 38, update of anticipated capital project.
Yeah, this is something that we provide the board every 6 months or even more frequently, honestly, as of late, but for sure every 6 months at the very least. Once before or around the time of the tax levy discussion and once around the operating budget discussion. Laura and Vinny, our building services manager, and I talked about our capital asset study multiple times. And Laura meets with Vinny separately and reviews it even in more detail. And then we all get together and we just talk about what's coming up, what's in line to be completed and pursued and completed this fiscal year and the remaining 3 months that we have, which is kind of the first half of that spreadsheet. And then looking to next year, what are the things that we anticipate taking on based on the capital asset study that the board reviewed? Was it 2 months ago? I can't, maybe was it December? I can't remember, but like that projection of like all the 20-year projection of like what we might need to repair or replace. And so not everything is on here, but these are the items that we feel like we really should plan to do. Having said that, I think for those of you who've been on the board a while, we kind of throw everything up there and then, things happen. When we get to it, we learn that maybe we don't have to take on this project right now. Maybe it could last another year. Maybe we start talking more to contractors and it feels like, well, they're recommending a part of this work, but not yet the full thing. So maybe the bids and quotes come back and they're much lower than what we're projecting. So these are just kind of ballpark figures, I would just say, and it gives you an idea of what we might be spending to replace or repair in the building, as well as some computers for the computer commons. So the big project is are the windows on the first floor. So just a little background on that. When we did the renovation project back in 2020, 2021, we asked our construction manager and architects, do we need to replace all the first floor windows as well as all these second floor windows? And they said, just do the second floor for now. And because the first floor windows are in pretty good condition, you get another, several years out of it. And we said, okay, we'll hold off on that. So that was 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's what's
Yeah,
so much.
time flies.
Next month will be 5 years ago that they did the lockdown. But we were already under
Right.
construction, so we could continue.
We started in January.
Right, so that's right. 5 years ago, we were doing that
Isn't it hard to believe?
first.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
We were meeting upstairs in the little boardroom. So this is much nicer. Laura, did you want to add anything? Because you and Vinny have been, talking a lot about this.
If somebody has questions about specific projects, I can try to answer them. Like Richard said, some of them are in very preliminary stages. We're getting a study to see what need to do for the bigger piece of it, but, yeah.
I will say, one thing that you might be curious about is, the Sprinter van at the very bottom of that. Yeah, we're investigating, exploring, the possibility of adding have you seen those, Sprinter vans or Ford Transit vans, you know, like kind of, we would purchase like a cargo van essentially and then customize it to have shelving and like a lift so people can get up on it. And that we can kind of put both carts intact, like on and off, a vehicle like that. It would be a much smaller vehicle than the bookmobile. We love the bookmobile. That's not going anywhere, but has a lot of life left in it and it's still a valuable, model of delivering services. But a van would allow us to get into different spaces, in different communities, different kind of parking lots and condos and different just areas that we could reach a different audience, that we're not currently able to, get to with a massive extended bookmobile. And our, bookmobile supervisor and our director of community engagement, Nancy, and Adam, our technical services supervisor, worked on a report to kind of, explore the idea of one, like, is there a need? What types of vehicles are there? What kind of features would we want? And so they've done a lot of that work, but we haven't bid it out yet. We haven't we don't have a number, we don't have a recommendation or proposal to bring to the board yet, but so that's not gonna be set until probably, maybe like summer, fall of next year, or even in the winter of next year, actually. And so, this year, I mean, yeah. But I just wanted to put it on your radar as a possible, expenditure, for fiscal year 26. So,
So the 175 that's projected, that includes the vehicle itself. Does that also include like all the technology and customization
yeah,
that you're
yeah.
thinking of?
Yeah, that's a kind of, we got a ballpark quote from a vendor that does this kind of stuff, and we felt that's kind of like the middle of the road number right there. So, and then, if we bid it out, we would have to bid something like this out where we would do a request for proposals or a request for bids and get multiple proposals and see from different vendors how they would approach the project and get different estimates of our quotes, basically, or proposals. And so the number may be a little higher, maybe the number will be a little lower, we don't know yet, but I just wanted to give you an indication of that project being on our radar. I'm not asking for approval or anything right now, obviously, but when the time comes and we have a proposal that after a bid process, Nancy and Carl would come and do like a full presentation on this type of, service delivery and, why it makes sense for Skokie. So I think you'll be impressed, but I was after I saw the report. So,
Yeah, a lot of questions.
yeah, Michelle, I know we talked about like the kind of transportation challenges, and this is kind of in part a response to some of that thinking, like we know that Skokie is 10 square miles, but to get from, to get from like the Old Orchard area to the library is not always that easy, sometimes public transportation isn't direct. You have to kind of switch different buses. People may be living in a situation where they're multi-generational household and they have one cars, and so this is a way to get materials and our staff out into the community in a bit a more powerful way and be proactive in reaching those areas we know that might be difficult to reach from the bookmobile. The biggest example that I know about is because I try to help solve this problem is the Old Orchard condos and near Old Orchard and the bookmobile there's so many people living there. There are patrons, there are community members, but the bookmobile just couldn't ever find a really solid spot on Saturday mornings to park safely. And we worked with the village to try to clear out use signage to like ensure that there would be a whole stretch of curb where the bookmobile could slide in on Saturdays, but no one paid attention to those and they just parked there anyway. And so it's just very frustrating because we knew that we would have patrons there, but we just couldn't get the bookmobile there, on a consistent basis. So this is a kind of situation, case study like where I think if we did take the Sprinter van out there and pop it into an environment like that, it would just reach so many more people, so, yeah. Anyway,
Do you know
this is not a
other-
presentation
I
on
know.
that, but yeah, I'm happy
Do
to
you
answer
know if there's
questions.
other libraries that do?
There's
something
tons.
similar?
There are so many examples of libraries that do that. A lot of libraries don't have the full-size bookmobile that we do. But they have like a fleet of these vans, so there are many more examples of these than honestly the big bookmobiles, so.
I'll be interested. to see.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
Yeah.
We're very excited about it, so. And people don't need a CDL to drive them, so our staffing situation would actually be easier to operate that vehicle. So, yeah. So I think that's, yeah.
Questions, comments? We don't need to vote on this, so. For our information.
Yeah. And this ties to the next item too, obviously.
Are people okay moving on to the projected? All right, so let's move on to page 41, projected FY 25-26 budget, which goes pages 41 through 48. Richard?
Yeah, so this is the time of the year where I give you the first look at the next year's budget, so fiscal year 25-26. And that includes the operating budget, but any utilization of the reserves or our acquisition fund as well. I won't read the memo, obviously, but it's a lengthy memo detailing, breaking down and explaining. So if you look at it's like the budget summary, the income summary, basically the revenue and expenditures. If you look at that, you can go down each line of revenue and each line of expenditure on the full budget line breakdown. And I try to give an explanation of what you're looking at and why the numbers are looking a certain way. Obviously, most of our revenue comes from property tax levies, but we have a portion, like around 6%, that comes from other sources. And then this year, we're also including utilization of some of our operating fund surplus. So when we say surplus, what Allison and I mean is that our operating fund is in a very good and a healthy place in terms of its balance right now. And so if we could live with it being slightly less. So that's the surplus we're talking about. So we could use that surplus and kind of basically decrease the operating fund balance and put some of that money, existing money. It's not new money, but it's existing money into the operating expenditures for next fiscal year. And then obviously the utilization of the reserves for all the projects that we just talked about in the anticipated capital improvement projects spreadsheet, which is not insignificant. So, and then I detail all the expenditures starting from personnel costs, which is the bulk of our budget. Obviously, that's not. I always try to mention this. That's not abnormal. Like any business, any employer, the costs of salaries and wages and anything related to their personnel, like insurance, health insurance, and continuing education, and all of that are always the bulk of any employer's budget. So it's the same for us. And then we have patron resources expenditures with collections, programming, and then operations, such as our IT budget. Our printing and publicity is basically our communications and multimedia engagement budget. A lot of that goes to our newsletter. What else? And then we obviously the building costs are significant. It's a big chunk of our budget and I just made the point that I made last year as well. It's basically the same wording that and I tried to convey this to the board even during before and during the renovation projects. That once we finish the renovation, it's not as if there was less to clean and less to keep up, right? It's actually the opposite. We want to maintain this level of cleanliness and appearance and quality in terms of the condition, so that the renovated spaces don't ever feel like they're starting to get worn and kind of dated, you know. So we put a significant amount of money into that. And then management expenditures is more kind of just like professional services. That includes legal fees, any consultants that we might use, any just kind of costs of, you know, meeting refreshments, that type of thing, staff days. And then what I already talked about, the capital expenditures and the ARC acquisition expenditures. So that's just kind of a rundown of like the big chunks. But if anyone has any comments or questions on any particular line or has a question about, you know, how we built this budget, happy to answer any questions you have. Allison can also help. And yeah, this is, and no vote is required today, just as a reminder. You'll get another version of this in March, shorter memo, because I'll just refer to this memo. And then April, will be asking you to approve the fiscal year 26 budget. So, yeah.
I did have a couple.
Yeah, sure.
From the learning and research.
Yep.
It was a big cut there between this past budget and for the proposed. Can you talk to me about what the difference would be or why?
In the collections?
Under learning and research.
Yeah. Those are our online databases, subscription databases. So they're like our online newspapers, periodicals, some of our creative learning products like Mango Languages and Creative Bug and what am I missing? Udemy now, like, so they're like learning platforms. And what was I can't remember now. I'm blanking on it, but they're every year Annabelle, our collection our access services director, she reviews all the products and like looks at the usage and then determines which ones are really not kind of getting the use for the costs that we're
So she's kind of weeding out.
yeah, exactly. Every year that happens. There's a particular one that I can try to find really quickly, but
You don't have to find it right now.
okay, yeah.
And if we get to that point, it means we have tried to promote it and we reach out to them, and it's just not.
Right.
But from what I saw, your proposal next year is spending approximately 150,000 more than this year. But that includes employee benefit costs going up 300,000. So you're offsetting those costs with other decreases.
You mean insurance?
Yeah, the insurance, the insurance, the FICA and the IRF go up a total of 300,000 in projections. So we're only increasing 150,000 for the full budget at the end.
Yeah, I mean, there's some
offsetting
lines
the-
that are decreasing, but also if the budget shortfall will utilize the surplus that I talked about before, the GOF surplus to cover that, you know, so, yeah.
So it's just really taking some of those monies and shifting based off of.
Yeah, like we can afford to, at this point, use some of the surplus in that GOF. We're right at the cusp there, you know, like I think this year we could possibly, we can do it. Next year, possibly. It all depends also on the incoming revenue, how much we spend in a given year. The it's such a big game changer, honestly, in terms of when we have vacancies that go unfilled for like 2, 3 months for like a full-time, say position, that adds up, so, and that's something we can't predict.
So the spending surplus isn't reflected in this budget?
It's all reflected, yeah. If you look at the summary income part, with the revenue and the expenditures, you'll see utilization of operating surplus for general expenditures, and then a separate one for even the transfer from the operating fund to the reserve is reflected all in this budget. So,
And then you have the capital, the utilization of reserves at 1.6, which really speaks to the capital project, right, that we had just discussed. But then there's a capital line item for,
yeah, the 88.
and I guess, how do we distinguish between the two?
Really, in terms of,
Projects are utilized for one versus.
yeah, great question. Really, they're all capital, that's all capital money, so there's not like a difference. Like we can use the capital from the operating budget, that 88,000, we can spend that before we even get to the reserve utilization. But it's like kind of one or the other. It doesn't really make that much of a difference, so usually we just kind of like look at the whole chart, and if there are just a few smaller like projects that will kind of make up the 88,000, we might organize it that way. But if there are big projects like the windows, that's like as a whole, like say 800,000 plus, we'll take it out of the reserves, so it's just kind of sorting it, but they're the same line, right? They're the same code in your ledger, right? So, yeah. Did you want to, I don't know, Allison might be able to explain that better than I can, but.
That takes more to the off to the bottom, like the distinction that the board is aware of large projects.
Mhm.
So it kind of gives you that distinction.
So then I guess the 1.6, I understand where that comes from, because that's from the project that the report that we had just seen previously. So I guess my question then would be where's the 88?
Where would what would we spend that on?
Right. 'Cause there
Right
is
now, we don't, that's a great question. Right now, we don't have that being spent on anything.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's just kind of like a little bumper for us, so that if something happens or whatever, and,
Because then how do you come up with the 88 from the 50 something?
Oh, okay, I see what you're
Like,
saying.
it seems very
So
like arbitrary.
Yeah.
Like they
So
go 56% euro.
It's the highest increase.
if you look at the projected revenue, we just basically chose some even numbers there that we think that we'll be comfortable with. And then when we factor that into all these line items, we make sure that the total revenue reflected is the exact same number as the total expenditures at the bottom of the summary statement. And so the capital operating line actually serves as like kind of like a equalizer, kind of, like that number will fluctuate to whatever it needs to be so that these numbers can be even. Yeah.
it's like a balance.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
the balance of it.
So again, some of this is static, year to year. But some of this is also just our best guess, and our approximation, I should say, so that's why we're using these even numbers, like 500,000 towards operating expenditures from our general operating fund. There's no way of having an exact number of what we exactly will need, because it all depends on tax collections, our spending, and all that, so.
Laura, you were gonna say.
Oh, I was just, sometimes things come up throughout the year that we don't have on our list to begin with, like the repair of the activity room before this year. It was not on our radar until it needed to be addressed. And so then we can turn to that fund and fund the repairs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's mostly to make the numbers even, at this point in the process. Yeah.
It's the only one that doesn't end with zero.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yeah. If we didn't do that, then the utilization number wouldn't end in a zero.
Right.
So one way or the other, yeah.
question on the maintenance of equipment line. Seems like, even when I look at year-to-date expenditures, like we've got 25% of the year left, but we have like 13% of the proposed budget. It just seems like that line item gets a little wacky sometimes. So I was just curious on the decision to keep that amount flat year over year.
Which line?
Currently, the maintenance of equipment.
Oh, so the
It's being
maintenance of,
zeroed out.
yeah.
Yeah, like what's, I don't
The,
understand.
okay, the maintenance of equipment line is a number of things, like copier printer maintenance and I think the fish tank and some other things, small things. But the big item on there is a maintenance contract we have for our automated materials handler in our workroom, the sorter, the automated sorter. And RFID self-checkout machines, and so that's a big number.
That one.
Yeah, and that gets eaten up in one shot, basically, like at one point in the year. So it's not like an evenly spent thing over month to month throughout the year. The maintenance of equipment line, what we're proposing is it actually to eliminate that budget line altogether and take off the tech related things and just add it to our tech and
So that's where that plus 17% is coming from, like year over year.
yes, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So it's going to there, and then where else is it
Maintenance
going?
of buildings and grounds. Yeah, so some of that 11% is because we're taking some of the maintenance of equipment and putting it into buildings and grounds.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then if you, like, let's pretend
Mhm,
you didn't separate it out
mhm,
and you still had it in the same line,
mhm.
are you projecting then same level of expenses for what those things would be, or are you anticipating an increase? In other words, is that plus
Yeah, I understand.
10% and
Yeah.
that plus 11%?
So the amount that was approved and budgeted for this current fiscal year is 67,500. And Laura, do you remember if what the projection of those components would be? Is it like the same or a little?
Projected 70, and everything,
Yeah.
the cost of everything can go up a little bit.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, round it up to 70, but then.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't like a huge increase and then transfer over to the other lines. It's just pretty much there. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just got confused when I saw 0% and then it was like lined out.
This is purely academic and I'm not an accountant, but
Yeah.
it seems to me that's
Should be minus,
confusing to call
yeah.
that zero when all the other zeros are where the numbers are remaining the same.
Yes,
Here, to me, that should be a minus 100% change
I.
because you're completely getting rid of it.
Mhm.
But you're calling that zero and all the other 0% mean there's no change. Here, there's a complete 100% change. So
Mhm.
it doesn't change any of the numbers, so it doesn't matter. but
That
it's
should
just
be
a-
negative 100%. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
you're
where I
right.
was getting confused, because I was like, I saw
Yes,
0, but then
right.
there's a line, I'm like, shouldn't there be
Right,
that?
and that's
equal
purely
number
full,
there?
yeah.
Yes.
That must just be a formula thing, because, yeah, that's probably a formula thing where we just
That's
needed a
fine, I was
negative
just
there.
confused, I was like, where? is this
Oh,
line
okay,
going?
okay, yeah,
I
yeah.
was a little.
It's not a
I-
zero.
that makes
It's a
sense.
complete minus.
I didn't
100.
even, honestly, I didn't even notice that, so I just knew that we were eliminating that line
Yeah.
altogether, so.
Okay, but now I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, that's a negative 100%.
Well, if if they're doing, because the formula divides by zero, you're gonna get zero.
Exactly.
Because that's what you're taking
That's
it down.
basic math, elementary math, yeah,
Anyway,
so, yeah.
academic. All right.
No,
any
no,
other
but that's
questions?
important.
We don't need to vote on it. All right.
Yeah. I just want to say that as always, if the board, if you have any other follow-up questions, like this is basically at this point, like a 3-month process now or 2-month process, so from here to April. So please, even in between meetings, feel free to shoot me an email or call. If you have any questions, concerns about this budget. Usually we get to the point where in April, it's familiar enough, there are all the questions and comments are kind of resolved and heard. And then the board approves, obviously, but yeah, it's a 2-month process here.
All right, I can't believe I'm asking this and it's not even 7:30 yet, but any comments from trustees?
I have two comments. One comment, last weekend I went to a wellness retreat here in Skokie that was hosted by a local business. And I did it partly for myself, just to increase my wellness, but then also I really wanted to interact with other people in the community. And when we were doing introductions and I mentioned that I was on the library board, people were just so excited to talk to me about it. They had nothing but wonderful things to say, like call outs for the world language section, for example, when they bring their parent here who, speaks a second language. So they were talking about that and just all the great community activities and the classes and everything. So people were just so it was really great to go to a community event and then to hear back from members of the community how pleased they are with the services. So I just wanted to mention that was great feedback. And then secondly, I'm not saying that we should do this, but I have a friend that lives up in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I guess the equivalent would be kind of like the Weber Leisure Center. They have a library vending machine at their facility, which is kind of cool. Like you scan your library card and you can check out. So kind of like we were talking about like the Sprinter van. It's just kind of a neat way where there's a lot of families and community, people going there. I just thought it was neat. And then next to it, they have a book drop where you return the books right next to it. So, I don't know if you've ever looked at anything like that, but I just thought it was a cool idea and I wanted to share.
We go to a lot of, every year, there are a number of library conferences, and these library conferences, some of you have been to some of them, the exhibit hall is like massive, and there are many vendors that sell that type of product. So we can definitely look into that. There's kind of not the same thing, but a different version of that, like a smart locker pickup thing, where
You go
like people reserve.
Or something and you.
Yes, exactly. We were one of the first early adopters of that, and it was, no joke, a nightmare. So, yes, I'll tell you this story later. I'm not even looking at Laura right now because I don't want the eye roll, but so I think we feel like a little bit burnt on kind of things like that. But the vending machines are kind of a different story, honestly. That's not like the
It's
smart
very
locker pickup.
self-serving.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. Like, again, I'm not saying we should do it or whatever, but I just thought it was an interesting way that it's another community touch point where there are families going by not near their public library. She explained to me they don't really have a big main library like ours. They have several small satellite ones. And so this is a little bit of an easier way. And she sees families all the time going up to it and picking.
There's versions of a vending machine that are like the, potato chip vending machine size. And then there's like the size of that Nook right there, with like a massive robotic arm that kind of rings up. And so there's like kind of very sophisticated and very kind of rudimentary machines. So, but it's a good reminder, like we should take a look at some of those products again, just to see if how far they've come and also see if it makes sense for certain locations. But thank you. Yeah.
Right, if you go to the airport now, you can almost get anything out of those machines there. You
That's
can get
true. Yeah.
cupcakes, you can get
Okay.
headphones, you can get
Cupcakes.
whatever. Yes,
Don't they get like just smushed?
I think they're in a box.
Okay.
But no,
Yeah,
you can get anything, so those.
yeah. When's the next big library conference? Is it yearly annual, I guess?
Yeah.
There's no, so where is that? I don't know how many people are going, but
I will be there.
so Laura and Annabelle, our access services collection manager, our director can investigate and try to win one of those machines for us because they're in the raffles, so that's how we won a smart locker. I put my business card in something and they, of course, picked ours, and
I would love to learn more about the lockers.
I'll share it with
Well,
you.
and
Yeah.
honestly, like, I know that I've taken my kids to the pool and we have a card for kids to just take books, like new, beautiful books from the library that they don't even need a library card, right? So there's plenty of other things that we have, even outside of a vending machine, which is very novel and fun too.
Yeah.
But, just the fact that we're giving away books too, I think is pretty powerful.
That would be even easier for us, actually, yeah. And the pool, we've done I remember bringing a cart out to the pool or something. once,
Libraries were still.
Oh, I've seen those, like
Yeah, in
around the
conjunction with the
park.
park district.
Yeah, I've seen that in the
Yeah,
park.
Yeah,
And then I went to that Main Street, the farmer's market that they have in the
the winter
winter.
market.
And I don't know if it was, I don't think it was a library, but they had a whole table of books they were giving away there.
I know you told me about that. I need to find out who was doing that, because I don't think it was our staff.
They had like, Skokie Main Street merch, and then at the table next to it, like a whole table of books.
Hmm.
The market was really cool.
We're
enjoyed it.
in discussions with them to try to get there at a future.
I think that would be good to go there. I mean, I went there Sunday morning, like right when they opened at 9, and there were a lot of people there.
Yeah,
So,
and it's cold too.
yeah, they've got fires outside.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other comments? Motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. I think this is a record.